Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was in Star Wars. Revan and Naruto, immortal beings, return to the Republic as it heads towards war once again. What events will these two alter? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 18. I don't think this was the plan, Master, HK said as they backed away from the crate dragon. Hey, you're the one that said there was a sand people conclave around here, Naruto said as he sent a fireball jutsu at the giant lizard. Things change in 4,000 years, Master. HK opened fire with the assault rifle. The crested a sand dune and Naruto swore. There was a group of sand people with their banthas. HK, while they'd been hunting, explained about the known species on the planet that Naruto bet Gaara would have had a field day on. The giant lizard roared, the sand people scattered. They are easily frightened, Master, but they'll be back, with greater numbers, HK warned as the droid continued firing at the dragon, its hide deflecting the blasts. Naruto slid the blaster the droid had been teaching how to use back into the thigh holster and growled. Enough of this shit. He bit his thumb and his hands flew through seals he'd learned when he was 11 years old. Kuchiyos, Yatai Kazushi no Jutsu. HK stopped firing and couldn't believe his optics as a giant toad appeared out of thin air and landed atop the crate dragon, crushing it. Naruto grinned a huge fox-like grin. That my cybernetic friend is the toad summoning jutsu, food cart destroyer. I learned it from my master when I was 15 and we were traveling. HK looked from the smashed form of the crate dragon that had taken explosives to take out, and a giant toad landing on it from 100-foot drop wipes it out. You are my hero, Master, HK said, its vocal patterns registering awe. Naruto went and pulled his lightsaber, started slicing the hide from the frame. HK remembered something Revan had done, reached into the creature's neck and pulled out a pair of pearls. For you, Master. Mistress found them valuable last time we hunted one. Naruto used a Suiton jutsu to clean the blood and gore off them and looked at them whistling. He slipped them into a pouch and hid that inside his shirt. What are we doing, Master? HK asked 20 minutes later as Naruto sliced another section of the dragon's hide off. Getting material. This stuff was able to block blaster bolts. I was thinking of a pair of boots, gloves and vests, belts and such for Revan. HK nodded his metal head. Mating ritual. Understood, Master. Naruto smiled. He was really getting along with the droid. He was happy to see it had an odd sense of humor. HK, try those wrist blades I installed. I believe Rev said they were coated with a material that could block a lightsaber. Let's see how they do on cutting meat. We'll cook some of this, smoke it for later. Naruto set up a fire while the droid continued to work. He could tell through the bond with his wife she was annoyed. What's wrong, love? He sent. Ugh. If we ever have children, remind me to never let them act like this little brat. Naruto wondered what the Skywalker boy had done to piss off his wife, when he felt a disturbance in the Force. As much as I'd love to talk, it seems HK and I are about to get in a fight with sand people. Sand people? Where are you? Revan's telepathic voice demanded. In the desert with HK. Talk later, love, Naruto said and closed the connection to his wife. He could feel her knocking, but decades of being married to the Jedi Sith had taught him when not to pick up, and when she was annoyed and at him, he knew best to stay away until sunset. HK, we've got company. The droid stopped its butchery, the blades retracted with a snikt, and the assassin droid unslung the assault rifle and Naruto heard it power up. Ready. Naruto smiled as he saw the droid arm the grenade launcher. Oh, I fear the sand people are going to find we aren't helpless as their usual fare, he said, activating his lightsaber with the snap hiss. And I so need to work off tension before getting yelled at by my wife. Ugh. Men. Revan said as she glared at Obi-Wan, who was backing away from the very pissed-off Jedi Master. I'm sure the boy didn't mean it, Master Revan. He said. Oh, he meant it. She snarled as she finished getting dressed by pulling on her robe and looking to where the said boy had retreated. You get the parts? Sorry, Master, but Watto claims if the pod isn't running, he's not fronting the money. Damn it to Black Pits. Revan bunched her fists and for a moment considered joining her husband amongst the dunes and help decrease the surplus sand people population. She looked at the Padawan. You guard that door while Padme is taking her own shower. If that little sneak gets close, hang him upside down and bolt his ass to the ceiling. Grabbing a brush, she wanted her husband and growled as she brushed her hair. This is one reason I hate fucking Tatooine. Sand is coarse, rough and gets everywhere. She thought as she brushed her long hair. She sat in the living room brushing her hair. Every so often she'd hear the blasted boy move about his room. Can I come out now? No. You're grounded. Revan said. Shmi lets him run feral, well not while I'm here. She considered turning him over her knee for some of his smart-ass comments while they were rebuilding the engines. Oh, he's good for one so young, but Force, I've been building machines since long before he was even a glimmer in the Force. Shaking her head, she began to braid her hair. Her eyes snapped to the door as Anakin tried to sneak out. Get the fuck back in your room. Slam. Revan sighed. Brat needs a good spanking and manners. She muttered. R2, who was sitting off to the side, whistled. You said it. Padme sighed as she allowed the cool water to rush down her body. It wasn't like a shower at the palace. But I do have my very own personal Jedi guard. She thought with a smile. There is something about Obi-Wan, he's kind, shy, honorable. She smiled as she rinsed her hair. And he's standing right outside the door. She smiled. She knew Sabe and the others would be disapproving, but there was something about the Padawan that she found soothing in his company. And he gets all gore-like whenever Anakin gives me a compliment. Granted they're bumbling, but for 9 years old he's trying awfully hard. All morning the younger boy had been trying to impress her. She laughed as his engine blew up. Granted Revan had been less than happy, and downright pissed, when the boy mouthed off to the Jedi Master. His mother's off working, and he's trying to act like a big shot. Padme thought. She agreed with Revan when she activated her lightsaber, when she'd caught the boy peeping on her in the shower. If her husband was here, I think he'd have fed him to that droid of theirs. She thought as she toweled off. She reached for clothes and blushed. Oh darn. She muttered, realizing in her rush to get to the fresher and use the shower, she'd left her fresh clothes on her bed. Biting her bottom lip, she made a choice. Obi-Wan. She called through the door. Yes? His voice sounded startled and she could imagine him blushing on the other side of the door. This is embarrassing, but I left my clothes in my room. Could you get them for me, please? Silence, then. Jay, just a moment. She heard his soft footsteps carry him away, and she continued to towel off. She thought what it was like for him at the Jedi Temple. They'd talked about it a bit last night, and she couldn't fathom some of the rules, and Master Revan's snorts told her the Master didn't agree with them. Obviously, as she's married, and she uses her emotions, while Obi-Wan said that the Jedi in his age group were trained to suppress them or control them tighter. Lost in thought, Padme didn't hear the door open, and she heard a sharp intake of breath. She turned and in so doing flashed poor Obi-Wan, who dropped her clothes to the floor and was blown backward by a massive nosebleed. Padme secured the towel around her and rushed to make sure that he was okay. Revan watched as Obi-Wan entered the room where they'd all slept. She'd not been happy with that, as she wasn't allowed to sleep properly with her husband. Well, we could have, maybe give the Padawan a proper education, and see how well the handmaiden holds up. Revan smirked. She looked up to see Obi-Wan knock on the door and open it. A second later she watched as he was blown back with a massive nosebleed, and Padme rush out wrapped in a towel. I guess he's not as institutionalized as I first thought. She thought with a grin as Padme cradled his head in her lap. Revan started to giggle at what that would do to the Padawan. Standing up she walked over. I suggest you go and get dressed, handmaiden, before he wakes up. It would be. Revan paused, funny as hell. Oh Cammy, I've been around Naruto way too long. Go get dressed. She finished. But Obi-Wan. Ben will be fine. She said, shooing the younger girl back to the bathroom, and once the door was closed, she told the Padawan. Up and at Ben. You can wank off later when no one is around. The flushed face told her that he had been near consciousness. Oh, what can I do with this information? Our sweet little Padawan has a crush on the handmaiden. Obi-Wan was on his feet and Revan saw he had managed to wipe his beard and nose clean. It really is a gift. All that blood and not one stain. Of course, that's the only time that power comes to life. Heh, Naruto called it part of the whole man law thing. Or Shiva. Revan laughed. Relax, Padawan, the door hissed open and Padme stood there for a moment. Now we have an engine to finish, the race won't be run by pushing the damn pod. Revan headed for the door. Skywalker, come with me. She called and the boy looked out the door, and then rushed to the woman's side. Once they were gone, Padme and Obi-Wan were left alone, one blushed and the other was nervous. This is weird. Padme muttered. Of course, I can't tell Sabe and the others that he saw me naked, they'd kill the poor man. But the situation had inserted ideas in the young teen's head that involved a certain brown-haired Padawan. Revan took the money that Naruto had collected and bought some of the parts needed on the cheap side. Stupid junk dealers. It's junk, not Cordis. She muttered as she handed another part to the boy behind her. But it's junk that people need, thus it's valuable. Revan looked at the boy. And on any other planet they'd be shot. She looked over another series of parts. With a grunt she led him back to the slave quarters. We're rushed for time, so we're going to cannibalize the engines. Revan told him. But nothing. If you hadn't tried to show off for your friends and to impress the handmaiden, we wouldn't be in this mess. I wasn't showing off. Anakin pouted. What the frack would you call it? Revan fired back. That stunt set fire to one engine and cracked the other. You're lucky they didn't explode. I knew what I was doing. Anakin said. No, you didn't. You didn't have the power distributed properly, and you had no safety protocols in place. If you'd have been racing, you'd have been a smear on the ground and ashes in an urn atop the mantel in your mother's home. Revan said, turning to look at the boy. You are beyond reckless. I'm sure you have some skills, but with no discipline and no control you're a menace to not only those around you but yourself. If Obi-Wan hadn't used the Force to deflect that outer casing you'd be head shorter. I get it, I messed up. The boy yelled at her, his eyes narrowed and Revan could feel the anger flowing off him. And your emotions? What do you care? Anakin snarled and stormed back to the house. Sai and Tsunade wanted me to have several of those. Revan said and followed after the stomping child. Later that night. Anakin is sitting on the balcony rail outside the hovel as Revan tends to a long cut on the boy's arm. You need to pay attention to what you are doing, she says. Anakin makes a sound as he leans back and looks up at the vast blanket of stars in the sky. Keep still and let me clean this, she mutters. But there are so many. Do they all have a system of planets? Anakin looked up. Obi-Wan had been talking about some of his adventures with his master Kagan during dinner. Revan nodded. Most of them, or they used to at any rate. Thinking she needed to update her knowledge of the known systems once this mission was over. Has anyone been to all of them? Anakin asked. Revan snorted. Not likely, unless they were very long-living. Like me. She thought. Then I want to be the first one to see them all, OW. Anakin winces and looks at Revan, who wipes a patch of blood off Anakin's arm. There, good as new. She really wanted to use some of the Jedi healing arts, or some of the Jutsu she knew, but something in the back of her mind was telling her to be careful and not show off too much. Like that mental warning I got around the Uchiha. She thought. From inside, Shmi yells out, Annie, bedtime. Anakin is distracted and Revan wipes the blood onto a chip. Anakin sees it, however. What are you doing? Just going to check your blood for infections. Revan lies with ease. I've never seen. Annie. I'm not going to tell you again. Shmi yells from inside. Revan prods him. Go on, you have a big day tomorrow. Good night. Anakin rolls his eyes as he runs into the hovel that was his home. Revan slips the bloodstained chip into her comlink, then calls Kagan. Master Jin. Revan? No, another person with a comlink to your personal communicator. She snarks. Listen, I need you to make an analysis of this blood sample I'm sending you. There was a pause and she knew she'd woken the other master up, and she grinned. Getting up there in years, Kagan? Not all of us are blessed with your youth and beauty, Revan. He shot back. She laughed. Why, Kagan, I'm flattered. Should I tell Naruto I'm leaving him for a younger man? Laughter was her answer. It's things like that remind me you both are older than I, and you are older than Master Yoda. Revan laughed, and I'm still prettier. Without a doubt. Kagan said, and Revan smiled. Ready, you charmer? What is it? Kagan asked. I need a midi-chlorian count. Yoda told me about them, and I want to test something. A pause. All right, got it. What are your readings? Revan asked. Silence for several beats. Something must be wrong with the transmission. Revan tried a signal check. Strange. The transmission is in good order, but the readings you asked for are off the chart, over 20,000. Revan bit her lip. Then prepared a new chip. Try this one. Okay, this is weird. Whose is this? Mine. Revan said. It's approaching 40,000 and it looks like it's climbing. Kagan sounded amazed. Don't worry about it. But Revan, Master Yoda doesn't have a midi-chlorian count as high as the first one, and yours is double that. No Jedi has, I bet. Revan muttered. I'll send you Naruto's later, as soon as he gets back. He's out again? Qui-Gon's voice sounded concerned. He and HK are out amongst the Dune Sea. She said. She knew he was fine as she could feel him, he just wasn't answering her link. I'll contact you later. Go back to sleep, old man. Revan said, teasing. Younger than you. Good night, Revan. The Jedi Master sighed and looked up to see Shmi standing in the doorway watching her, an embarrassed look on her face before she turns and heads back to the kitchen. Revan looks back up at the stars, wondering what the Force had in store for them. Sunrise. Padme leaves the hovel and looks out over the city. It looks so peaceful. She thought as she looked down to see R2 putting the finishing touches on the paint job to the pod. Nearly finished? She asks the astromech droid. R2 whistles positively. She turns and sees Anakin must have snuck out during the night as he was sleeping against one of the remodeled engines. Obi-Wan came up from behind her. He's been here for 3 hours. He said softly. They turned to see the boy Kitster, that Anakin introduced to them yesterday, riding towards them on a strange camel-like creature. He is leading a second one behind him. Padme moves towards Anakin. She notes he looks very vulnerable as he sleeps. She studies him for a moment, then touches him on the cheek. He jerks awake at the contact, then yawns and gives her a puzzled look. "You were in my dream," he says. Padme raises an eyebrow at this. "You were leading a huge army into battle." "I hope not. I hate fighting," Padme says. "You better go inside, your mother was looking for you." "Best clean up, we have to leave soon." Anakin stands and stretches just as Kitster arrives. "Hook him up, Kitster." He then looks at Padme while Obi-Wan goes to help Anakin's friend. "I won't be too long." "Where's Revan?" Padme smiled. "She left already. I think she went to meet with Watto at the arena." Race crews mill about the large building with over a dozen pod racers being readied for the race. Alien crews and pilots rush about, making last-minute adjustments on their vehicles. Revan strides through the activity with Watto flying near her shoulder. "And I want to see your spaceship the moment the race is over," Watto said. "Patience, Toydarian. I assure you that you'll have what you deserve before the sun set, and we'll be far away from here." Watto snorted. "Not if your ship belongs to me, I think. I warn you now, no funny business." "You don't think Anakin can win?" She paused and looked at the Toydarian. Watto was stopped from answering by a new voice. "He's bet on the Dug to win." Revan turned to see a grinning Naruto and HK-47 standing there. She took in her husband's appearance. His clothes were covered with sand, some minor tears, and she noticed a pack slung to his back. "Don't get me wrong. I have great faith in the boy, he's a credit to your race, but Sebulba is going to win," Watto says, pointing to an orange racer off to one side where they see a Dug having his shoulders and neck massaged by twin Yobanas. "Why?" Revan asked. "Because he always wins," Watto said, then laughed. "I'm betting heavily on Sebulba." "I'll take that bet," Naruto says. Watto stops laughing and looks at the blonde. "What? What do you mean?" Naruto steps up. "I'll wager this shiny crate dragon pearl against, say, the boy and his mother." Watto's eyes widened seeing the pearl, as did Revan's, which then narrowed as she realized what her husband and droid had been doing in the desert. "I don't know," Watto said, a greedy look on his face. "Perhaps just one, the mother maybe, the boy isn't for sale." Naruto shook his head. "The boy is small, he can't be worth much." Watto shakes his head. "I had this appraised, it's worth more than a starship." Watto shakes his head again. "For both, or no bet," Naruto said, narrowing his eyes. Watto sighed. "One gem that I have not seen appraised is worth 2 slaves. Not by a long shot. 1 slave or nothing." Naruto looked at Revan. "The boy then." Watto pulls out a small cube from his pocket. "We'll let fate decide. Blue it's the boy, red his mother." "How about blue the boy and his mother, and red just the mother?" The Toydarian gets a grin and nods before tossing the cube. Revan lifts her hand slightly, and the cube lands on blue. Watto is angry while Namikaze smile at him. "You won the small toss, Outlander, but you won't win the race, so it makes little difference." The Toydarian flutters away. "You cheated," Naruto said, looking at his wife. "Just hedging your bets, dear." Besides, the cube was loaded. She grabs him by the front of his shirt. "And what were you doing hunting crate dragons, without me?" Naruto scratched the back of his neck and then looked to see the others arriving. "Oh, look, Ben's here," he said, praying he could get out of it for now. Anakin and Padme enter the hangar on one of the EOPs, pulling an engine. Kitster is on the other pulling another engine with 3PO walking alongside. R2 is behind pulling the pod with Shmi sitting on it and Obi-Wan walking next to her. Watto passes Anakin as he leaves. "Bonapa Kesa Pariso, Owana Miti Chobad." Better stop your friend's betting, or I'll end up owning him too. Watto flutters off laughing. Anakin looks at Revan and Naruto. What did he mean by that? Naruto smirks as he looks at his wife. We'll tell you later, Gaki. HK approaches the droids, R2 beeps and whistles, and 3PO steps back as the assassin droid's optics focus on him. Confirmation. Master has shown this unit many things since our last meeting. If the Sissy Protocol droid would come closer, this unit would be more than happy to demonstrate. Amendment, of course it would be more interesting in the vacuum of space. Obi-Wan off to the side shudders at what the droids were talking about. He noticed a gaffi stick strapped to the droid's back and looked to see Naruto looking innocent as his wife glared at him while Padme was looking at Anakin and Kitster in disbelief when they revealed Anakin had never even won a race before, and hadn't finished either. You'll do it this time. Kitster said. Of course he will. Revan said. She looked at Naruto and the blonde grinned. She wondered what her husband had in store for the race. Chapter 19. A vast arena located in the Tatooine Desert, it is a large semicircular amphitheater that is packed with at least 100,000 beings of various ages and races. Large viewing platforms loom over the racetrack, while the voice of the two-headed announcer describes the scene. Below, the contestants are making their way out onto the starting grid. On the left side of the tracks across from the grandstands, a line of pod racers emerge from the large hangar, surrounded by several crew members. The pods are pulled by a wide variety of creatures, each led by aliens carrying flags. The pilots stand facing the royal box, to which they bow to the figure of Jabba the Hutt. Sebulba, who happens to be parked near Anakin, stands and waves to his fans while a small pep band play and the fans cheer. Obi-Wan and Kitster attack the giant engines to Anakin's pod with a long cable. While this is going on, Shmi gives Anakin a big hug and a kiss. Be safe, she says. I will, Mom, I promise. She hurries away before the tears slip from her eyes. Anakin checks the cable hitches, while off to the side Revan is speaking with her husband. Where did he go? Who, dear? Naruto asks, entwining his fingers behind his head, and gives her his most innocent look. My droid. You know, your new buddy. Where is HK? Revan asked, keeping her temper. Oh, he's around. Naruto said. They hear Anakin's name, and the Namikaze see him wave, and the crowd yells. Their eyes narrow, seeing Sebulba near the engines of Anakin's pod. Kitster is leading the Eops away. R2 whistles and follows Obi-Wan. Naruto smirks as Padme walks up and gives Anakin a look on the cheek for luck. You think Ben's going to do something about that? He asks, and Revan looks to see the Padawan watching. Nope. Her eyes land on the Dug and frowns. She heads towards him and sees him going to taunt Anakin. She examines the engine. Oh, no you don't. She mutters as she pulls out a tool and starts making repairs. What's wrong? Revan looks up to see Padme. Thrice damned Dug just tried to sabotage Anakin's engines. It would blow later when stressed. They heard a growl and both women turned to see Naruto speaking into a comlink. They didn't hear what he said, but he slipped it away after a moment, his blue eyes on the Dug as it moved away from Anakin. The Dug, seeing him, widened its eyes. Hey shitstain. Naruto said. Remember me? The Dug shuffled back a few feet, and as if sensing trouble, guards were on the field. Sebulba, feeling cocky, shoots him a grin, unaware of Revan's repairs. Naruto keeps an eye on the Dug till it's back at its pod. Then he walks up, grabs Anakin by the back of his shirt and lifts him into the racer. The boy's yelps are ignored and he starts to strap himself into the pod. Revan walks up to the other side. Are you all set? Anakin nods, and through the Force the Jedi Master can feel the boy's nausea. Remember what I told you. Concentrate on the moment. Feel, don't think, trust your instincts. Anakin nods and gives a shaky smile. May the Force be with you. Revan says, patting the helmet-covered head as the boy slips on his goggles. The Namikaze step back as Anakin flips several switches and powerful energy binders shoot from the engines. Anakin flips a switch and his engine starts. The incredible roar of the high-powered engine igniting echoes throughout the arena. Drivers yelling at droids to get out of the way, the whole arena filled with tension as they await the start of the race. All around engines roar to life. Revan grabbed her husband and stopped him. Where is HK? Naruto sighed. There's going to be trouble, and I'm stacking the deck. She looked at him. While we were doing some hunting, we ran across a bounty hunter named Aura Singh. Who? A badass bounty hunter. From what I've heard, she's good enough to hunt Jedi. Revan's eyes narrow. And she's here why? Don't know. But she has been asking around about a certain Gaki. Revan's danger sense kicked in. She's hunting the boy. Why? I mean, sure, he's gifted, but apparently not to kill, but to kidnap. It's why I have HK heading out. We think she's going to be in one of the blind stretches. Naruto admitted. I'll get. You stay here with Ben and the girl. Last thing we need is to put her in danger. Naruto said. You're sounding very commanding, dear. Reminds me of when you were Hokage. He smiled, but then she cut it in half with, and you remember how well I took orders then. Naruto sighed. Rev, you be here, I'm taking a swoop bike I acquired. That you killed the previous owner. Naruto shrugged. He was a bounty. When you get back you are going to tell me about what you've been doing and why you were hunting a crate dragon, without me. Naruto gulped and handed her an earlink. It's set to our channel, that way you know what's happening. She sighed and kissed him. Remember, no mass property damage. And keep the body count to a minimum. He finished as he kissed her again before rushing off. Revan sighed as slipped on the receiver and went to find Obi-Wan and the others. Master Revan, where is Naruto? Obi-Wan asked when she rejoined them. He's gone to retrieve HK. Which wasn't a lie, but the last thing she needed was to worry Shmi and Padme, who she could feel in the Force as both were nervous, and they all looked at Revan as she entered the viewing platform that looked like an elevator. Is he nervous? Shmi asked, trying to cover her own fears and nerves by focusing on her son. Revan smiled. He's fine. At this, Padme spoke up, you Jedi are far too reckless. The Queen. Revan raised an eyebrow. If you want to play this game in public, then fine. The Queen trusts my judgment, young handmaiden. You should too. Revan says, stressing the girl's public title with a grin, and saw the flash of irritation on Padme's face. You assume too much. The girl mumbled. Obi-Wan put a calming hand on her shoulder. He'd been chastised by masters before, and Revan had that same look. He missed something, and whatever it was had upset the handmaiden. Padme shot him a look, and he gave her a reassuring grin as Revan took her seat, and the platform is raised into the air. Shmi in the center between Padme and Revan holds the handheld monitor, entering the name of the racer she wanted to watch. Overhead, the sound of the announcer calling for the engines to be brought up to full power had the fans around the stadium getting louder. On a bridge over the track, a great green light at the center flashes after a gong sounds. This is the start of the race. The pod racers shoot forward with high-pitched screams. Anakin's engine coughs and floods, then dies. All the other racers except one swerve around him and disappear down the track. Fans watch, some laugh as the slave boy struggles to get his racer started. Padme and Obi-Wan watching are disappointed with Anakin. Revan puts her arm around a very war-rid Shmi in a show of comfort. Her eyes, however, are focused on the pod. Finally, Anakin's engines ignite, and he zooms away after the receding pack of competitors. leaving one quadruped racer still trying to get started while the two-headed announcer described the race progress, and about Anakin being hard-pressed to catch up to the leaders. The pod racers fly across the desert. Sebulba was running neck and neck with Mahonik. They round the first turn in the track, side by side. Sebulba drives his pod into his rival, forcing him into the wall of a large rock formation. Mahonik crashes in a spectacular display of fire and smoke. Anakin is much faster than the back-end stragglers and passes them easily. One of the racers, Giscano, won't let Anakin pass him by. Anakin tries to pass him on one side and is cut off. He then tries to pass him on the other side and is cut off. As they come up on a cliff drop-off, Anakin backs off, then guns it as Giscano goes over the cliff. Anakin accelerates so fast that he sails right over the top of Giscano and speeds away. For Tusken Raiders perched above the race course fire their rifles at the pods racing in the canyon below them. One shot ricochets off the back of Anakin's pod. Back with the crowd, Revan looks at the results and keeps her face blank, but inside she's seething. Blasted, Naruto, where are you? Why? What's wrong? The blonde sent back to his wife. Tuskens are camped out on the canyon dune turn. They just took some shots at Anakin and the other racers. Revan sent back. I'll do what I can, love, but HK has engaged Singh. She's more dangerous at the moment than some sand people trying to get in some sport. Naruto sent back. Be careful, love. I don't like the fact a bounty hunter like Singh is focusing on Anakin, if it's like you said. Revan sent back. There was no further reply as she knew that he had entered battle. While Anakin was racing, HK-47 was tearing up the Tatooine landscape with excessive amounts of blaster fire with his assault rifle. Statement: hold still, pale meatbag, so that I can teach you the meaning of love. Aura Singh flipped and dodged behind a crop of boulders. The white-skinned woman cursed as the insane droid had somehow sneaked up on her, and made the comment, Master would not approve of your attentions towards the rather annoying little meatbag. Therefore, your termination is required. Since then, she'd been unable to do much, but avoid the laser fire. From her position she could see a speeder approaching at a very fast pace. Jedi? Aura thought, feeling the energy around the being. She saw spiky blonde hair blowing as the speeder swooped around and came to a halt, the rider performing a flip and landing next to the droid that still had her pinned down with the excessive amounts of laser fire. This keeps up and I'll miss my target, she thought as the boulder was now chipping away. She could hear the droid. Greetings and salutations, Master. Permission to use grenades? The droid sounded cheerful. Not right, his second HK. Go and deal with the Tuskens out near the canyon dune turn. Leave none alive. The blonde ordered, and this surprised Singh as she thought for certain the swoop rider was a Jedi. Affirmative. Careful with this one, Master. Aura Singh is reported to have Jedi training. I'll be fine, HK. Aura Singh peeked around the boulder and saw a man with tan skin, blonde hair and whisker marks on his cheeks. He saw her and grinned. Hello there. Come on out, HK is gone and won't hurt you. Aura scoffed, but stepped out. Lies. Your droid attacked me under your orders. Naruto shrugged. I heard you were after a certain boy, and I can't allow you to have him. Aura drew her blaster. I don't think a young Padawan like yourself is a match for me. Naruto smiled. Why are you all so overconfident? Aura looked at him. He had yet to draw a weapon. Die, Jedi! She yelled as she opened fire. Chapter 20. Naruto spun, avoiding the hail of blaster fire. As he did, he launched a barrage of shuriken and Aura was forced to stop her assault and get out of the way. What the hell are those? The bounty hunter demanded as she got to her feet. Those aren't weapons of a Jedi. Naruto smirked. I'm no Jedi, well, not yet, maybe never. I'm a ninja. he said as his hands blurred and Aura watched as he finished, not sure what he was doing. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Naruto intoned and spat a great fireball. The pale bounty hunter barely managed to dodge, the heat of the fireball licking at the bottom of her boots as she got out of the way. Naruto smirked. Now, can we talk about this nicely, or do I have to get serious? Aura scampered behind the rock formation and pulled a frag grenade, and pulling the pin tossed it. She was surprised moments later when it flew back over and landed at her feet. Swearing in Hati, she managed to leap away as it exploded. Now, can we talk or do you want to continue this? She heard the blonde ask, her hand clutching her blaster tighter. Revan could feel her husband's mirth, and she saw the screen in Shmi's hand and watched as the blaster fire from the Tusken Raiders was suddenly cut off and the pods passed by without further incident. HK or Naruto must have dealt with them. The Jedi Master thought. She noticed the handmaiden was gripping Obi-Wan's hand and filed that away for later torment, blackmail. She mentally corrected at the amount of embarrassment she could cause the Padawan. Naruto love, what are you doing? She mentally sent out. She didn't get an actual answer, but she got a sense of mischief. Fine, but I want details, she sent, then focused on the race once more as a pod exploded, missing the turn and hitting a canyon wall. I prefer swoop bikes. Better control. She thought as the howl of engines was heard. She closes her eyes and uses the force to meditate and see the whole race and events around her. The crowd screams. Revan can feel Watto from where he is sitting with his friends, laughing, confident in Anakin's defeat. Below she can sense the quadrupod engines finally start as the racers come around the corner. The driver puts it into gear and the four engines go off in different directions, exploding in a spectacular display, while the pod drops to the ground just as Sebulba's pod enters the arena, followed closely by the other racers. She can hear the announcer calling out positions, and she pushes out all the other noise as she focuses on Anakin. She can feel his frustration, his excitement, his determination. Feel Anakin, feel the force around you, in you, she sent. His pod passes and I blink later, the gap closer now, the crowd is wild. Revan can feel the tension from both Shmi and Padme. She can feel Obi-Wan trying to use the force to keep the handmaiden calm. Okay there, Ben? She asks and looks at his hand, which is the vice-like grip of Padme. Ben winces. Perfectly fine, Master Revan, he says, and she can hear the hint of strain in his voice. She smirks at him, letting him know that he's been caught in his little white lie. In the race, Sebulba purposely breaks off a piece of his pod and uses it as a weapon by letting it go. The piece of scrap at high speeds is like a missile and strikes the pod just behind him, entering the engine, causing him to veer off and into Anakin, and unhooks one of the main straps of Anakin's engines that links the pod to his engines. Anakin struggles to keep control of his little pod as it whips about wildly. As the pod swings near the broken engine strap, the youngest racer there makes a grab for it, finally catches it, and hook it to the pod. Ahead of this, while Anakin does some in-flight maintenance, Sebulba flashes another racer with his side exhaust, and the racer crashes with a cloud of dust. A third racer flies into the dust cloud and crashes into the down pod, destroying both. Anakin rounds the corner and heads into the cloud of smoke and dust and hits a part of one of the engine remains, but manages to regain control quickly. Anakin finally manages to catch up with Sebulba. The pair run neck and neck over the rough terrain. Everyone in the stadium screams as they come through the arena. The lights in the tower indicate that this is the start of the third and last lap. Sebulba uses his side exhaust port to try and cut through Anakin's engines, but the youngster manages to avoid having his engine disabled, but is forced off course and onto a service ramp, busting the barriers that had been set up before the race. Naruto was having a grand time. The bounty hunter was devious and had lots of different attacks. Right now, they were fighting unarmed, and Naruto realized that she had robot parts, or what Revan told him was cybernetic implants. She's good, but like Revan, the taijutsu of the galaxy is rather weak compared to what we use back home. He thought, holding back. He ducked a roundhouse kick from Singh and performed a basic leg sweep that connected. Naruto heard the howl of the engine and looked up just in time to see a very familiar pod shoot off the ramp and into the air. He watches as the pod sails into the air, and he could see the boy making adjustments and the pod make its descent. Naruto smirked seeing as he nearly took off Sebulba's head as he landed in front of him and taking the lead. Way to go Gaki. He cheered and his danger sense kicked in, and he dropped to the ground avoiding the blaster shot. Rolling away he kicked up to his feet and spun. As he did, he called his lightsaber from the storage rune. It activated with a snap-hiss, the blade blocking the blaster shots with an ease many Jedi never exhibit. He looked at Singh. Are we back to this again, Aura-chan? Aura Singh, former Jedi learner, turned bounty hunter, snarled in frustration as the blonde gave her a foxy grin and held his lightsaber in a relaxed reverse grip, balanced on one foot, the other bent behind. The pearl-white blade seemed blinding against the desert backdrop. Singh couldn't take her eyes off the blonde. Come on Aura-chan, just call it a day and leave the Gaki alone, Naruto said. Aura Singh couldn't see a way of completing the task of kidnapping the boy as long as the blonde Jedi was around. With a snarl she opened fire with blaster shots and raced towards her speeder. Leaping into the seat and gunning the engine, she sped away, vowing that next time she would end the blonde Jedi. Naruto sighed and deactivated his lightsaber. He turned seeing the approaching speeder carrying HK and leaned against the rock. Master? HK intoned, the red optics scanning. You didn't kill the pale meatbag? She got away, HK. He said. You let her go? Statement, disappointed feelings, Master. I must inform Mistress that you have gone soft and allowed female meat sack to escape. Naruto sighed. There are times I really hate HK and his way of thinking, then there are times where I wonder what unleashing him on Oto and the other ninja nations that threaten Konohagakure would be like. Climbing into the speeder he sighed. Just take us back to Revan. Affirmative, Master. As the speeder pulled away, Naruto felt his curiosity and asked. HK, what happened with the Tuscans? Glorious jubilation, they screamed as I shot off their kneecaps, then made keening wails as I proceeded to eviscerate them with the hidden wrist blades. Justification, they attempted to fight back with their gaffy sticks. Regretful pause, they really need to get better weapons if they wish to do glorious battle. Naruto shook his head as the droid with sound effects retold the battle as he drove. He won. Padme yelled as Anakin crossed the finish line. They had witnessed the struggle between the boy and the Dug as they approached the arena. Revan smiles recalling as she felt Anakin pull on the Force to separate his pod from the Dugs and the resulting crash for the alien that had cheated his way throughout the entire race. I detest cheaters, she thought. Racing should be skill, not how much you cheat and get praised for it. She smiled seeing Obi-Wan pull the boy from his pod and spin him around in the air, before putting him down where he was mobbed by his friend Kitster and his mother. She watched as Padme knelt and hugged him. With a smirk she went to find a certain Toydarian. Revan left Watto and smiled seeing Naruto leaning against a wall waiting for her. She relaxed into his arms and he kissed her forehead. Where's HK? She asked after several minutes of silence. I have him keeping an eye on the boy, Naruto said. Aura Singh is still out there, as is the person who ordered her to capture him. Revan nuzzled his chest. You stink Namikaze, she said, getting a good whiff of him. Yeah, well, desert fighting does that. She had Jedi training, Naruto said. How do you know? Revan asked, not breaking contact with her husband. The way she moved, the feeling when she used the Force for some of her moves. Revan sighed. We'll need to look into it later, I guess, once we get back to Coruscant. She then poked him in the ribs. And you have a lot explaining to do, Naruto sighed. Okay. But then so do you. Revan smiled. Come on, let's get you somewhere where you can wash up and tell me about what you and my droid have been doing. Naruto, an arm over her shoulders, let her lead him towards the hangar where the others were waiting. I will say this, it hasn't been dull since I woke up. Revan smiled, happy that her husband was fitting into her world easier than she did in his all those years ago. I can't believe it. Shmi said later that day as they were gathered in the Skywalker home. Believe it. Naruto said, holding up the device that would deactivate the explosives. Mom. Anakin said in surprise. We're free. He said, his eyes wide in shock. Obi-Wan and Padme had taken the needed parts back to the ship with R2 and HK, leaving the Namikaze with the Skywalkers. Shmi smiled as she hugged her son, tears in her eyes. She looked at the Namikaze, a watery smile on her lips. Thank you. Thank you both so much. She said, her voice choked with emotions. Revan shared a look with her husband. We would like to make you an offer, Shmi. Chapter 21. Revan watched as Anakin packed, the boy's whole posture screamed defiance. She wants the best for you. She finally said. What would you know? Anakin said as he shoved a wadded shirt into his back. Revan smirked and used the Force to pull it back out and fold it neatly. Because my mother gave me to the Jedi when I was younger than you. You at least got to know your mother, Anakin. Mine feared me when I used the Force to float a stuffed animal to my crib as a baby. Revan said with a hint of sadness. Many children are taken from their parents before they're 5, and by the time your age, they no longer recall who their families were. Why? The boy turned to look at her. Revan sighed. As long as I can remember, the Jedi separated families. They said it caused too much conflict. And they did that to you? Revan nodded as she used her telekinesis to fold his clothes and repack them into the backpack. I was nearly 6 when Jedi Master Vrook came and took me and my sister away. She was sent to one enclave and I another. Do you see her at all? Anakin asked. Revan's eyes took a faraway look. Jaden was my twin, even separated we had a bond, all our people did. When a Sith Lord calling himself Lord Viper destroyed our world, our people were wiped out, we were the last. That's impossible. Anakin said. I wish it was. I think that's when I began to look for power, for revenge. Jaden tried to talk me out of it, but with my best friend Malik supporting me, we hunted Viper down. You killed him. Anakin said with a nod. No. I beat him. Revan said. I turned away and was going to leave him for the Republic to put on trial. Revan closed her eyes. Viper, however, used the Force to send his lightsaber flying at my unprotected back. I sensed it too late to protect myself, and I was exhausted from the fights to get to him and with him. Revan felt a pain she hadn't felt in a very long time. Jaden, who had exhausted herself with fighting his troops, didn't use the Force. She threw her own body in the way and took the killing blow. Revan could still picture seeing the red-bladed lightsaber penetrate her sister's body and stick out her back. Revan opened her eyes and looked right in Anakin's. I took my first step to the dark side that day. I used my anger to rip Viper apart. By the time the Republic soldiers arrived, there was just blood mist settling on the floor. She put a hand on Anakin's shoulder. A year later I led an army to war, and by the end I was so full of anger and resentment at the Jedi Council that I took the army and went to war with the Republic. I hunted my fellow Jedi. Revan felt an arm and knew Naruto was right behind her. He knew everything about her. What happened then? Anakin asked. I was given a second chance. Malik, my best friend, turned on me for more power. The Jedi saved me from death. For some time, I didn't know who I was or what I had done, but when I did, I was sick as I recalled what led me to that point. I wanted nothing more than to die, to pay for all my sins. It was then that I was visited by my sister's spirit. She scolded me, told me to remember who I was, where I came from. Naruto hugged her from behind. I found balance for myself. I found friends, family and love. She smiled over her shoulder at her husband. So, back to the origin of this tale. To start, I believe the Jedi are right, but at the same time I feel that in later years, connections give us reason and purpose. Anakin was confused. Don't worry, Gaki. You'll understand when you're older. Naruto said, letting his wife go. Is Shmi ready? Mom's coming too? Anakin asked. For now. Revan said, her tone indicating that their final destination wouldn't be Anakin's mother's. Am I going to become a Jedi? Anakin asked. Maybe, maybe not. Revan said with a shrug. Hard to say. The future is always in motion. And if the fossils on the council won't take him, we go with Plan B. Naruto said with a sure grin. What's Plan B? And why couldn't I stay and hear what you said to my mother? Some things you don't need to know or aren't ready for. Naruto said. But in the future, you will be. Anakin pouted at not knowing what had been said. So, what now? Revan nodded and squared her shoulders. Now we go to our ship and get off this dust bowl. They were leaving the Skywalker home when they ran into Kagan. What are you doing out here? Revan asked the other master. Came to see what was keeping you. Obi-Wan was going on about picking up passengers. At this his gaze landed on Anakin and Shmi. Hello. The Jedi Master said, giving them a bow. Just admit you were being nosy and wanted to stretch your legs. Naruto said, and Kagan gave him a grin, which was returned. Men. Revan said. She made the introductions and Kagan decided to be Shmi's escort as they left Mos Espa, Anakin taking the time to say goodbye to his friends. The Namikaze leading the way. The three Jedi feeling something was wrong, none of them noticed the sensor ball near the top of a building marking their presence and the direction they were headed in. Naruto squinted and looked around. They were a mile out of Mos Espa, and the hairs on the back of his neck were standing on end. Revan saw him looking around. What is it, love, she sent through their bond? I don't know. But I feel, you remember that time we went after Sasuke and Akatsuki ambushed us? Naruto sent to his wife. Yes. We managed to kill Hayden, but Sasuke got away, Revan said, remembering that day, and the supposed immortal found out what happens when his supposed god and immortality met a pissed-off woman wielding a lightsaber. I feel like something is going to go along those lines. I don't think it's aimed at the boy or his mother, but at us, Naruto confessed. It wasn't until they were in sight of the ship that Kagan, Revan and Naruto turned. SHMI. Anakin down. Kagan and Revan yelled as a speeder bike passed over them a half a second after they dropped to their bellies. A figure in black leapt off and the snap hiss of a red lightsaber filled the air, as the figure in back attacked Kagan, who managed to get his lightsaber up and in a defensive position that otherwise would have separated his head from his shoulders. Revan moved in to help and the figure danced back, the hood fell revealing the red and black markings and horned head of a Zabrak. The yellow eyes burned with anger as Revan's purple-bladed lightsaber blocked in her reverse grip. She used a force push to knock the Zabrak back. Naruto, get them to the ship. Revan yelled. Tell them to take off. Kagan ordered as he attacked while Revan defended. The blonde nodded and scooped Shmi up into his arms, a one-handed seal, and a Kage Bunshin picked up Anakin. Time to go. Hang on. Shmi and Anakin were surprised at the speed that Naruto moved at as he crossed the sand to the ship. He was up the ramp before either could form a question or take a breath. Obi-Wan was there in a second. Get the ship in the air. Where's Kagan? The Padawan asked. Out there with a horn-headed guy. I'm going to help. And with that, Naruto was gone in a yellow flash. Maul was not in the best of moods. He found more Jedi than what was reported. It doesn't matter. He thought as he used a spin kicked back by the Force to knock the male away. He was concerned with the skill of the female as she used various styles, and he recognized several of the Sith-style saber blocks. He managed to flip above another Force push, and once he landed, he used the Force to send a wave of sand at the long-haired woman, but she seemed prepared and used a Force push of her own to cancel it out. Maul was getting annoyed with the female and her reverse-style grip she used. It's as if she's mocking me with just defending. He snarled as he slashed at her, and she leapt back as the male attacked with his green lightsaber. Maul was about to activate the other blade of his double-bladed lightsaber when a third figure involved itself in the battle. A pearl-white lightsaber connected with his red blade, and Maul snarled seeing the blonde man there. He grinned. "Hey, hornhead. Mind if I cut in?" Naruto went on with a flurry of cuts and slices, one nicking Maul's upper thigh. "Naruto, you idiot!" The woman yelled, and Maul watched as she and the older male were looking for an opening. "Ship's here, get on," the blonde said as he blocked Maul's attacks, the Sith getting desperate at eliminating one of the Jedi protecting the Queen. The Nubian ship hovered, and Maul watched as the older male leapt to the waiting ramp. "Get going," Revan ordered as she and Naruto now drove Maul back. "Ladies first," the blonde said. Maul could only watch as the woman snarled and leapt with a back flip, landing on the ramp, her lightsaber deactivated. "Sorry, but I have a ship to catch." Naruto leapt and landed on the ramp. Maul, not to lose, leapt for the ramp as well, but the woman shook her head, and he was caught full by a Force push that sent him crashing back into the sand below. He got to his feet seeing the ramp close and the silver ship rocket away. With a snarl he deactivated his lightsaber and swore he would kill one of those three the next time they fought. Perhaps mate with the female, she would produce strong offspring. He thought, heading for the speeder bike, his mind not even trying to figure out how to report this failure to his master. On board the Queen's ship. "Are you okay?" Anakin asked, rushing up along with Obi-Wan to the three. Kagan was sucking air, his age telling him desert fighting was not for him. The heat had been very draining, and the opponent had been very skilled. "We're fine, Gaki," Naruto said, leaning against a bulkhead, Revan in his arms. The Jedi Master had a look on her face. "We're in trouble," she finally said. "Why?" Obi-Wan asked, helping his master to his feet. "That Zabrak was trained." "Sith trained? That's not possible. The Sith are dead and gone." Kagan shook his head at his Padawan's naivety. "We will be cautious and keep our eyes open. He was very skilled." "No kidding. He fought you and Revan off and me once I got there," Naruto said. "Complaint registration. Why wasn't I invited, Master?" The five turned to see HK-47 standing there with the assault rifle. Behind him was Shmi, looking nervous. "Next time, HK. Next time," Naruto said as he rested his head against his wife's. "Next stop, Coruscant," Revan's voice intruded. Do you think they cleaned up after my prank yet?" Revan sighed. "You are such a child at times." Everyone looked at the couple as they chuckled. Later that night a figure crept across the main hold, stopping at the communications console. The dim lights reveal it to be Padme as she taps several buttons and turns the volume down to avoid waking the sleeping Anakin and Shmi asleep on acceleration couches across the way. She listens to Bibble plead and she sighs, her eyes hold in exhaustion. She turns and nearly yelps at Obi-Wan being right behind her. "Can't sleep?" he asks softly. Padme gathers herself. The Queen is worried. Her people are suffering, dying. She must convince the Senate to intervene or... She trails off, not sure what to say. Trying times are ahead, Obi-Wan says. He notices her slight shiver and picks up a spare blanket and wraps it around her. "You're shivering." "I guess I'm still adjusting from being on such a warm planet." Padme says, accepting the blanket. You don't seem to be bothered. She noted. Obi-Wan smiled. With Master Kagan I got used to moving from place to place, different climates. He shrugs. The Force is a powerful ally. And such stylish robes. She teased, getting a smile from as well. They serve their purpose. He countered. Padme sees Anakin asleep. I wonder what will happen to him and his mother now. Obi-Wan looked at the boy that had won the race. Master Revan and Naruto have begun to train him, or as Naruto put it, getting him in shape. So, you think he'll be a Jedi? Padme asked. Obi-Wan shrugged. It is not up to I to say. The council will decide. Regardless of what happens, Master Revan and Naruto seem to have plans. He looked at Padme. Why so concerned? You going to miss his crush? Padme narrowed her eyes at him. Why? Jealous? Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow. And pray tell, young handmaiden, am I supposed to be jealous? The two shared a look. The last several days of talking they got along. If I have to tell you, then perhaps you aren't as wise as you think. She slipped around him and headed back to the Queen's quarters. Obi-Wan watched her go. Neither one had noticed the eyes from the acceleration couch watching them. Chapter 22. Flashback. You will never win, Uchiha. Revan said, standing between the body of her lover and the traitor. You scream about power and greatness, but all's you are is a spoiled little boy that needs others to do what you can't. Take it back, fox whore. The Dobe has never beaten me, and he never will. Sasuke said, his Sharingan eyes blazing. Revan was not impressed. Every time you meet Uchiha, he holds back. He's never once unleashed his ability or power on you. And even now, you're using traitors to weaken him before you fight. You're not superior, you're weaker than a genin. Sasuke attacked, the grass cutter slicing through the air, but Revan used the pair of vibroblades she'd brought with her and slapped the poison blade aside. She spun, the tip of the sword nicking Sasuke's chin and leaving a deep cut. Sasuke staggered back, a hand clutching his bleeding chin, his glare promising death to the dark-haired woman that had been around the Dobe for the last 2 years. Join me, he said suddenly. Revan looked at him and laughed. You know, I knew a boy like you once. Sasuke waited. And? I sliced off his jawbone, she said, reversing her grip on one blade. And I killed him years later. Now ask yourself this, Uchiha, if I would do that to someone I considered my best friend and brother, what will I do to you? Sasuke and his team retreated and Tsunade rushed up to heal and remove the poison from Naruto. Revan sheathed the swords on her back before kneeling next to the blonde who captured her heart. You idiot, she said. You wake up, we are going to break this bad habit you have of showing mercy to people who've tried to kill you. Tsunade snorted as her hand glowed green. Good luck with that girlie. I've known him since he was 12, he's still a lovable baka who cares too much. Revan stroked the whisker marks inside. He's getting better, she said. Tsunade nodded. The blonde's path of destruction through the bandit camp that Team Hebe had created was testament to that. Naruto groaned. What hit me? He muttered as his eyes fluttered open. Danzo with a poison-coated stiletto. Oh. The blonde said, looking at Revan. I really need to do something about that asshole. I did. He's gone on a sudden diet and lost 8 pounds. Revan said with a smirk. Oh? She cut off his head and then punted it over the camp. Sai has gone with Shikamaru, Kiba, Niji and 3 squads of loyal Umbu to remove the rest of the root forces from Konoha. Oh, good. Sleepy now, Naruto said as he closed his eyes. Revan shook her head. Idiot. You care about everyone, it's going to be the death of you someday. End flashback. Revan sat upright and looked around. I hate remembering the number of times he nearly died. She thought as she looked at her husband who was sleeping soundly. The pair had commandeered one of the cabins, more to the point Revan told anyone that if she didn't have alone time with her husband they would get a force-powered lightsaber enema. He was sleeping on his back, his bare chest reminding her of their actions before sleeping. After all these years and it never gets old. She thought as her memory recalled his touch, his kiss. I keep thinking like this, and he's going to get molested in his sleep. Revan thought as she grabbed a robe and decided to get some of the swill that the pilot Oli tried to pass as kaffa. I'm spoiled by living with Naruto for decades on Ibanez. She thought passing the sleeping Shmi and Anakin. Checking the wall chrono she saw that it was still early. Why do I keep thinking of that backwater world now? I mean, yeah, I miss our friends, but most of them were old when we left. They have to be dead by now. She sighed, pouring the coffee and carrying it back towards her room with Naruto. I started dreaming of the Uchiha when we met the boy. Is that a sign? Is he going to turn out like the Uchiha if he gets training in the temple? I hate visions, especially cryptic ones. Slipping back into the room she smiled seeing Naruto still asleep, his blonde hair sprawled like its owner. Going to her possessions she picked up the holocron that they found on Nar Shada. Do I really want to hear what the others have to say? Can I really take it after all this time? Her fingers traced the markings on the holocron, then she put it down with a sigh. Such a sigh from a beautiful woman. That deep of thoughts, love? She looked over her shoulder to see Naruto awake, and laying on his side looking at her with concern. Just maudlin memories, I guess. She said. You had another dream. He said as a statement, not a question. Which time? When Danzo stabbed you in the back with that poisoned stiletto. She said. Naruto waited till she put her mug down, before pulling her to him. I'm right here, love. Alive and well. That is decades ago. I know. She sighed. They started up again when we first met the boy. The Gaki? Naruto looked down at her as she rested her head on his chest. She nodded slightly and let a breath out. Something about him reminds me of the Uchiha. Naruto paused and Revan looked up to see his eyes unfocused. Shaking his head, he looked at her after a moment. We'll be careful then. Right now, his future is shrouded. I'll talk with the Trog when we get back to the temple. Revan said as she enjoyed the sensation of being in her husband's arms. What will we do till then? He asked with a teasing smirk. I suppose I could work on HK a bit. Revan said teasingly, and made to rise from the bed. Naruto's hand was there just as fast as Jedi reflexes, and pulled her back into bed atop of him. You spend more time with that droid, and I might get jealous. Of a droid? She asked, then froze as a memory surfaced. Her shudder had Naruto looking at her. What's wrong? He asked in concern. Revan looked at him. I just remembered a woman, back after the council had wiped my memories and I had taken up training again on Dantooine. I can't remember her name, but I do recall that her husband had died and she treated the droid as a replacement in everything. Naruto looked a bit piqued. Everything? At her nod he shuddered. Karth mission and I found it out amidst the plains. It was letting the calf hounds destroy it. She sighed. We killed the hounds and were about to return it back to the enclave where his owner was waiting when it begged to be destroyed. I saw several paths at that point. I could comply and tell its mistress why. I could destroy it, spare its owner, and tell her that the calf hounds destroyed it. I could destroy it and tell her it was still out there, or I could take it back. Naruto listened. And? He asked when she had remained silent for several minutes. I listened as Karth made jokes and innuendo. I felt bad for the droid, so I promised it I would destroy it and tell its mistress that it had been savaged beyond repair by the hounds. She sighed. It thanked me. Revan looked up at her husband. I recovered its memory core and downloaded it. What she did to that thing? She shuddered. Some people, when they are hurt, will do anything to feel. Naruto said, and Revan knew what he was talking about. Enough about that, she said, straddling him. I'm feeling neglected, she said as his hands rested on her thighs. He gave her a grin. Really? Even after 4 hours last night? It's a new day, dear, she reminded him. His hands slid up to the belt of her robe and gave it a tug. Well, I wouldn't want to be accused of neglecting my wife. The robe parted, showing expansive tan skin and aged white scars. Naruto traced them as his hands made their way up to her breasts, gently palming them, his thumbs rubbing the nubs, getting a soft moan from Revan, her hair loose from its braid hanging down her back as she arched into her husband's hands. Revan's moan got louder as Naruto flipped their positions, and he was between her legs, his head moving down, as he slowly kissed the expansive skin, his tongue dancing around her belly button. Naruto smiled as he kissed her inner thigh, his hands teasing her folds. He was just about to taste his wife when the door chime sounded. Gah! Revan snarled in frustration as the door chimed again. Naruto rolled to the edge and grabbed his pants, and after zipping them up he went to see who just endeared themselves to his wife. It hissed open, and on the other side was one of the queen's handmaidens. Sable? Suddy? Sammy? Naruto thought, but shook his head. Yes. Her Majesty wishes to speak with you and Lady Revan before we arrive at Coruscant. The captain assures us we are nearing the system and should be there in less than 2 hours. Naruto sighed. Being a Jedi is almost as bad as being a ninja and a Kage, he thought. Tell Her Majesty we will join her shortly. The handmaiden nodded and left. Naruto palmed the door control and it hissed shut. He barely managed to turn with the warning in the force as his wife tackled him, her legs wrapping around him. She can wait, she growled. Naruto knew from years of marriage to never argue with his wife as he carried her back to the bed. Obi-Wan looked at the wall separating the room he shared with his master to the room that housed the Namikaze and knew that next time he traveled he was going to see about getting a cabin further away. Must they do that again? He asked, covering his head with a pillow. Kagan chuckled as he finished getting ready for the day. Someday you'll understand, my young Padawan, he said. I doubt it, Master. Unless the Order changes rules. Kagan smiled as he heard Revan's yell of pleasure and shook his head. But do they have to be so loud when rubbing it in? He muttered as he put his hair in its messy ponytail. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.